Hey everyone, it is George Couros. Welcome back to another episode of the Innovator's Mindset podcast. And I'm gonna tell a little bit of a personal story today. There's a reason I thought about this. I heard someone say something like, when a bad experience happens, that's a really great learning opportunity. And always trying to figure out the positive when we have negative situations. And that is a great thing. A lot of what shapes us today are some negative experiences we had in the past and how we have overcome them. But sometimes the experience can just suck. And we have to let that person decide that. There's a show I've been watching for years. It's called Pardon the Interruption. And I love the hosts, Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. Probably two of my idols. I absolutely love them. I've watched them for over 20 plus years. And one of the things that they say often in the show, because it's meant to be a debate show, which they're just have such a great dynamic with each other, is they often say this, that both things can be true. Yes, sometimes we have negative experiences, and yes, they can also suck. Both things can be true. So I'm going to share a little experience I had as a child when I was probably 10 years old that has stuck with me to this day. And I think that's something we really need to think about as educators, is that many of the experiences our kids have right now will shape them and literally until they die, until their last moments. They might not think about them all the time, but they shape who we are as people. So I will tell you this story. When I was a kid growing up in Canada, I played hockey. I often get asked about playing hockey or why I don't love hockey as much as I do. And again, things shape us when we're kids. Playing hockey in Canada is just part of being a Canadian. That's just kind of a thing. So I really didn't grow up with any kids who didn't play. That was just kind of what we did. Now, I know it's very different now. There's so many more sports that people aspire to. Basketball was something that was made fun of when I was a kid. Now there's a huge basketball culture in Canada, which is fantastic. I love it. But when I was a kid, playing hockey was kind of the thing. And to this day, when I'm in the US and I'm speaking and I talk about basketball, people are like, "You don't like hockey?" Like, whatever. I'm just not really interested in it. This probably is why. There's sometimes I just don't even think about it, but this is probably why. I played hockey from the ages of 5 to about 10 years old, and I quit when I was 10. I didn't play very much when I was a kid, which is really weird because at 5, I only played from 5 to 10. You would think you would play a ton because that's when you develop skills. But because hockey was so competitive when I was a child, and it probably is to this day, they distinguished if you were a good hockey player right at the beginning, the worse you were, the less time you would get. For me, it was really interesting that I wouldn't play when I think back about it, because that's a time where you really figure out, can you develop the skill? You can't really develop the skill if you don't play. But I remember playing as a kid, probably from my first or second year, there was 3 lines and I was always on the third line, and we didn't get to play equal amount of time. It'd be first, second, third. So basically every 9 opportunities I would get a chance to play while, that was the other players on the team got to play a lot more. I get it when I coach high school basketball, very different, especially when scholarships are involved or college opportunities. But when you're that little, it's just such a weird thing to me, kids being benched because they're not good enough, because how would they ever develop their skill? Now, I was a very big kid. I was very heavy, and that will come into play in a second. So I played and I enjoyed it, but it was more for the friendship that I had. I really liked playing with my buddies. Growing up as a kid, that's, of course, you want to play because your friends are there. But there was one time we went to a tournament. It was about 2.5 hours away. And I actually remember where we went. I remember everything about this night to this day. I was 10 years old. We were coming back from a tournament. It was myself, a dad was driving, and 3 other kids in this car. We're in this car. So we're about 25, 30 minutes in. They just started teasing me mercilessly about my weight, just making fat jokes. it was tough. And I'm a big guy, but I'm pretty sensitive. It was kind of, I tried to laugh it off at the beginning, but it got to a point where I was literally in tears bawling. And they kept going. They just kept going. That bothered me. But the thing that bothered me the most, and I will never forget ever, is the dad who knew it was going on, could hear everything, did nothing. Didn't make him stop, didn't say, hey, you need to cut it out, nothing. So we pull up to my house. I'm the first kid pulled off, and I'm in tears. I cannot wait to get out of this car. When I was in the car, even though it was 2.5 hour drive, because I made this drive as an adult. I know exactly the amount of time, but it felt like forever that this car ride was never going to end. So I picked up my stinky hockey bag out of the trunk, go into the house, and I'm really upset. The thing with me, if you know this about me, if I'm emotional about something, I have the worst poker face of all time. If something bothers me, you will know. And I wish I could hide it sometimes, but I can't. So I walked in, and my mom knew I was upset about something. And when she started asking me, I just burst into tears, and I was very, very upset. I was really embarrassed because of it, and something I really struggle with. The next day, I remember going to the rink, and my mom made us go to the rink. If you know my mom, she's pretty short. She's about 4'11", and she had me later in life. So when we went there, she was probably 10 years older than every person there. It is my mom and just all these dads. And I will never forget just seeing my mom point up at these dads who are way bigger than her and ripping them apart. And as much as that was such a horrible thing that happened, and how much I hated it and how much it still bothers me to this day, the one thing, I don't think I've ever loved my mom more. And I just know I've never felt, she's always had my back. And it was just really interesting because I just remember how little she was pointing up at these gentlemen, and they were terrified of her because of how upset they were. And I quit. I never played again. I was it. I didn't want to play. I was so embarrassed about it. I just didn't want to play. These are people I thought were my friends. And listen, if you know me at all, I tease people, and I try, and sometimes you go too far. And I've done it before. And as soon as I feel that I've gone too far, I get, and maybe that's what the dad was thinking. I don't know. But if I brought someone to tears, then that's a pretty good indicator. There's this thing, sometimes with, my male friends, we joke around with each other, mess around with each other. And it's something, there's some camaraderie to it. But it went to a point where there's probably in that car, I don't think I ever really connected with any of those kids ever again. There's people on my hockey team that I'm still friends with to this day, even as adults. But in that car, I just never again. So I quit. I never played again. And probably part of the reason I'm not a big hockey fan is because of that. I just always associate the sport with that thing that happened in my life. So about a year later, I started playing basketball. And I was a pretty big kid. Even at 5 years old, I was really heavy. But from 10 to 11, all of a sudden, I sprouted up. I got a lot taller. And I don't know if I lost weight or just the weight I was holding made more sense for the height that I was. But I was, I started to slim down, and I've always struggled with my weight. To this day, I struggle with my weight. No matter how I look, just so you know, I've always struggled with my weight. It's something that I've always had an issue with. But at that time, I had grown significantly. I got way taller. And you can tell, this is really hard for me to still talk about. And I was 10. I was 10 years old. I'm 51 years old right now. And it's still tough to think about. But I started playing basketball, and I wasn't very good, but I was tall. And when you're a kid, to be good at basketball, being tall is such an advantage. So as I played, I started doing really well. I started doing really well because basically I was just taller than every kid out there. But that feeling of doing well actually helped me develop my skills. And then I became a better basketball player. And it's something, and I know people get really sick of me talking about basketball, but you can see this is not just a sport to me. This is something that really helped me as a human being to find some passion, to develop leadership, to really build community. I think about something that I know this is a dad thing. I really want my kids to play basketball because it has given me so much in life. When I started playing, I started becoming more athletic, started getting more into sports. Because hockey for me it was like more of a hobby. I never really was passionate about it, I don't think. Maybe I was, but I just maybe didn't have the opportunity to develop that passion. But I fell in love with basketball, and I felt really coached and supported. So much so that I became so athletic that about 2 years later, the dad who was the driver in the car had noticed how much leaner and taller I'd become. And probably, to be honest with you, the curls, the hair, a lot of people mistake me for a hockey player. It is something that I've had. Probably the beard is not helping, the playoff beard that I sport all year round. And I remember him asking me to play. The thing was, I said something so nasty to him, and he did not even flinch because he knew he deserved it. I had no issue saying that to him at all because I will never forget what happened in that car. So I played, and I saw this quote just the other day. I thought it was really, really fascinating. It was from Coach Rick Pitino. Now, I don't really know much about Rick Pitino. Like, I know him in the sense of I know him as a coach, things like that. He was in an interview, and someone actually like paraphrased what he'd said. It was this: love without discipline spoils. Discipline without love hardens. You need both. The second I read this, I thought about my coaches when I play basketball. This is why I love them so much. They push me so hard, but I know they love me. That's something I always think about. And did they love me? You know what I mean when I say this. I felt really supported and appreciated, but it was extremely disciplined. As a dad, I have very high expectations for my kids, especially when they connect with other people, their work ethic, how they leave a place better than when they found it. That matters to me, but they know I love them. So I can be very hard on them, but they know they love me. That's what I got from my coaches. And it accelerated me so much so that I love basketball to this day. I played, I coached, I reffed. I tried to be that coach. I tried to be the ref. Listen, I will tell you this about that experience and how much it has shaped me. I don't hold any grudges to the dad, to the kids, anything like that. People make mistakes. People do dumb things. But I also can hate that experience for myself. I can hate that experience. I can also recognize that it shaped a lot of the good things that I am today. I could also say some of the mistakes I made probably came from that moment as well. So yes, we learn from horrible experiences, but they can also suck. So as I wrote this out and shared this in my newsletter, I always do this 3 things. I don't know why I started writing this, but it just really connected. It's just something that was sitting on my mind. It bubbles up every now and then. I just think about it. Maybe it's something with my kids I don't know. But I shared 3 lessons. This is lesson 1. The presence or absence of one caring adult, like a parent or a coach, can define how a child remembers an experience for life. Do your best to make it a good one. I think about that dad in the car, how I needed him to do something in that moment, he didn't, and how that shaped a lot of me. And then I think about my head basketball coach, Kevin Greenman, who is no longer with us, who really shaped a lot of who I am today. I always looked at him as a second dad. And I love that man so much. He was not easy on me. And that's part of the reason I loved him. He saw something in me and he tried to bring out the best in me. He knew if you just show me appreciation, you could push me so hard. And I would become better for that. And I wanted to be pushed. I still thrive being coached because of that man, as long as you build that relationship with me. The second lesson I shared was this: confidence often grows where opportunity and belief intersect. not just where talent exists. If you can help a child see their potential before they do, they are more likely to eventually believe in themselves. Being tall, as I said, was an advantage as a basketball player. But because people saw I had that confidence, they helped me develop skills. And those skills that I developed actually really helped me to become a better basketball player. There's so many things I learned playing the sport of basketball that I applied to speaking, to apply to leadership, when I reffed, when I coached, when I played. But I can all push that back to having really great coaches who helped me see my own abilities and really try to build on what I was good at the time, not just focus on what I couldn't do. The last lesson, and this is the full circle. There are times in life when something horrible can happen and it can eventually make us better, but it can also stick with people in a way that makes them wish it had never happened. Both things can be true. Don't discount tough events for others as learning opportunities. That is up for the individual to decide. So just be very cognizant that sometimes we have these bad experiences. We have bad interviews. We have jobs that suck or bad experiences with our bosses or colleagues and things like that. Yes, of course, we can learn from those things, but they can also suck. Don't discount that for someone else. I want to share that story with you because I think it has shaped a lot of who I am today. As I said, it's probably shaped some of the missteps I've made over the years, but it's also shaped my focus on really trying to help kids to really kind of stick in. I could share stories about how I probably stuck up for kids who are similar to me because I did not want them to feel what I had felt as a kid myself. But those experiences shape us. They can still suck. So maybe not the most uplifting podcast, but it's real. And I think that's needed more than ever in our world today. All the fakeness that we see out there is that sometimes things just suck, and yeah, we can learn from them, but they shape us. Try your best never to let a kid have an experience that will shape them in a negative way. Because even if it happens as a kid, it will stick with you forever as an adult. And I think that's something I always think about and try to be the best I can be. I fall all the time, but I still try. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. I hope you got something out of this. I really appreciate you listening right to the end. It means a lot. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for all you do. Take care.